Hey guys, this is Scott, Vegas Horse Pools. I'm here with my buddy Gary. Gary, what do you think about the crazy college bowl season so far?
I think it is absolute chaos, and I enjoy it, but you have to know what you're watching, right? I think that's the biggest thing to gather from bowl season. These are exhibitions. You don't know which coach is really trying to look ahead towards next season, and which coaches are really using this as a reward for the players, and they're trying to win one last game for this season. Send the seniors off with a win, something like that. So you got to know what you're looking for and just kind of enjoy it for what it is as opposed to what you think it should be, right?
Exactly. And there's two games I really want to talk about here. I have not talked to my doctor yet, but I'm projecting the Nebraska game probably cost me 5 to 7 years. When they blocked that punt and the score became 20-15, I think I
Another one
lost
score
five,
game.
I think I lost 5 to 7 years on that play. Because all I could see was the special teams have found a way to lose this ball game. The defense could not. You could not have asked more from them. The
No.
offense, I don't know. I'm a little disappointed with the offense what they did, but they played well enough to win, given how great the defense did. But the special team says, "Wait a minute, hold your beer here, because I think we can still give this thing away." That 20-15, it really hurt my heart. It
Oh,
really
I can
did.
imagine. I mean, it was close enough to the end there that luckily the offense was able to get some first downs and kind of melt
Yes.
that thing away. But man, it gets back to a one score game, and you Nebraska fans have been through this before. You know how y'all have given away so many games at the end of the game. I mean, you just went through it with the Iowa game.
Yes.
So you don't want to have to experience that again. And thank goodness the offense was good enough to be able to melt that thing away after that last score. But man, cheers to that defense. I mean,
Yeah.
big time clap for them for showing up without the defensive coordinator, without all the guys that are in the portal that
Right.
have gone elsewhere and showed up big time. So I was impressed with that.
Well, let's talk about somebody that I was not impressed with. I actually turned this ball game off at halftime because I knew the winner. It was Miami taking on Iowa State. That game was over at halftime. So I turned it off and did something else. Turns out I wasn't alone in skipping the second half. What do you have to say about that quarterback?
So apparently from everything that I have understood from the Miami beat writers, this was the plan all along. Cam Ward was going to play in the first half. Emory Williams was going to play in the second half so that they could figure out exactly what they've got going into next year. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show here is you got to know what you're looking at. And no, it's not Miami's job to tell anybody what their plans are for a ball game. But
Right.
it does seem strange that you do have other seniors and whatnot that are out there fighting that are trying to get a win, and you've got one guy that's going to sit on the sideline. And cheers to him for actually suiting up at all because he didn't have to. I mean, he's probably going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And nowadays, a lot of those guys do not play in the bowl games. Now, we've seen more of them recently, and it becomes a culture thing. If your program wants that to happen, if they want to go out and play, then obviously they'll make that happen. But it it bothered me initially, and then you start thinking about it, and it's okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of teams that did not have their top quarterback, whether it be transfer portal, whether it be sitting out for the NFL draft, whatever it is, and they're prepping for whatever comes next, which is what the football program is trying to do as well. Because Miami's going to have to go out and try and find another transfer quarterback unless they've got one here that
Hmm.
we can develop him, we can work with him, let's get him some live action here to see exactly what we got. The stuff that we had seen from Emory Williams last year, it wasn't great. And now you've had a year to sit and develop under Cam Ward, somebody like that. Another year with this offense coordinator, Shannon Dawson. It still didn't look great. Um, but it's hard for me to be upset with really anybody here. But it does feel weird to have a quarterback go out and play a half and then just sit on the sidelines where he could have made a difference in the ball game, right?
Well, you also have to admit one thing here. We're not playing this for fun. Now, the Nebraska game, obviously, I play with my heart and I won't gamble on the game. But if I would have knew this issue going into that football game, I would have laid the wood on Iowa State at halftime.
Oh yeah.
I would have bet a ton of money. Here's the problem though, Gary, and I think you're going too easy on this. If you're telling me that the beat writers knew, that's a huge thing to know, and they could have just destroyed the books on that. Now, I don't follow Miami because, well, they didn't make the playoffs, so I'm not that too concerned with them. So I'm not going to know that. But if I would have known that, I would have made a killing in that second half. Like I said, I love college football, and I gave that game up at halftime because it was over, in my opinion. I believe Miami is going to win that ball game, so I can do something else. And then I forgot the final score, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck could have happened. That's when I saw the big announcement about the quarterback. So with stuff like this, though, I mean, it's very scary.
Well, yeah. No, it undermines. I don't want to say it undermines the integrity, but when it comes to bowl season, you don't know what kids are going to sit out. You don't really know what these rosters are going to look like to begin with. So really, when you bet on these bowl games, you kind of get what you get. Does that make sense? So you have to, I mean, you got to play it real tight. You got to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're betting. And if you get got, then you get got. And it's, I mean, I was a Miami minus 3.5 better, but I didn't put a full unit on it because you never know with these things. And exactly what happened is what I was worried might happen. But everything before this said that, yeah, Cam Ward is going to play. They never specified exactly how long he was going to play, anything like that. And if he had gone out and, tweaked an ankle or had any kind of an issue, well, yeah, they probably would have pulled him early. So it's hard for me to get super upset about this because, I mean, you've got some teams like Marshall that just decide less than 2 weeks before the game that, hey, you know what? We don't even have enough players. We're not going to go out and embarrass ourselves. Right.
Yeah.
They gave us a game. It was a very entertaining game. All the Pop-Tart stuff was a lot of fun. I can't get too mad about it because there are no rules. There is no, we don't have anything set up for these programs to have to give injury reports. It's conference based right now. The ACC doesn't really have anything specific, especially when it comes to bowl games. We watched another ACC. Well, all the ACC teams have been getting their brains beat in, right? But we did see North Carolina, and I had no clue who those guys were, and I don't think even half the coaching staff did. And they went out and just got blasted by UConn, right? So it's hard to get super upset about it because I understand why people do, because it is an incredibly popular guy that everybody knows. Everybody knows Cam Ward. Everybody knows he's going to be a big NFL draft pick.
Yeah.
He went out, he played for a half, he put up some fun numbers, and it was a fun bowl game. As a Miami bettor, do I wish that he'd played the full game? Yeah. But also, there's always that chance. Let's look at it this way. If he had gotten drilled, if he had gotten like a concussion right before the half and couldn't play the second half, are we as upset about it? No, because we all kind of get it. In this situation, apparently the coaching staff had this plan. I don't think anybody else really knew about it. So yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from as far as, they really could have, altered the books in a big way.
Yeah.
But, if nobody on the coaching staff told anybody and it was just, hey, the offensive staff knows at halftime, Emory Williams is coming in and that's it. Well, it is what it is. I bet Miami and I lost, and I'm not terribly upset about it because I've gotten beat by way dumber things in this bowl season and in this regular season.
Well, you're a lot nicer person than I am. I fully admit that. And I've lost money on a lot dumber things also. But I'll also say this. If two people know a secret, there's going to be one of the two that leaks it.
That's true.
And that's a problem for me. But that's probably long enough for me to complain about the Miami game and for me to pat myself on the back of surviving the Nebraska game. Let's talk about what's really important here. Let's bring up these bowl games. Let's talk about this first game. And it looks like it's Penn State taking on Boise State. Looks like it's right now at 11, maybe 11 and a half. depending on what book you're looking at.
I
Gary,
see
what are your
Pinnacle,
numbers?
11.5.
Yeah. What does your numbers look like on this game?
My power rating has got it. Let's see, Penn State by exactly 6 points. My, with stats included, it's only got Penn State by like 3. However, I'll go ahead and tell you, I like Penn State a lot in this game. I mean,
I
just
do
an
too.
absolute ton. Boise State is number 133 in tackling grade at PFF, and they got to deal with these 2 running backs, Allen and Singleton. I mean, that is just a nightmare for them. And yeah, Boise is second in the FBS in sacks, but over 70% of those came in the first 7 games of the season, and it's against the number 81 strength of schedule in the country. This is a little bit different beast. If you go and look at Drew Aller's his advanced stats, his time ratio as far as when he drops back to when he takes a sack, on average, it's almost 5 seconds. It's like 4.5 to 5 seconds how long it takes for another team to sack him. So he gets the ball out pretty quick. Normally his drawback time is under 3 seconds before he gets rid of the ball. It's going to be hard for Boise State to be able to get to him. They're going to have to be really, really aggressive to get to him. If they're really, really aggressive, the offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, he's going to have guys schemed wide open because of all the motion and whatnot that he does pre-snap. This is such a massive talent gap that I know that Ashton Jeanty is he's a cheat code, but I also know that Penn State is really, really good against the run. I don't know what Boise State does here. I think this just looks like a mismatch to me. Are you kind of seeing the same thing here?
100%. I think Penn State can name their score.
Yeah.
I think
interesting stat on this, by the way. Did you know both of these teams are undefeated in the Fiesta Bowl all time?
No,
I had no idea. Yeah,
No.
Penn State 7-0, Boise 3-0.
I had no idea. So I guess we'll learn something on this podcast if you like it or not.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a good one. But yeah, we're 100%.
I've spent a lot of hours on these games, by the way. I have dug up some crazy stuff on these.
That's why I love talking to you, Gary. I always learn something from you. Sometimes I don't even want to know it, but I learned something anyway. So I think this Fiesta record is on that list of not need to know.
Exactly.
But let's talk about something a little more important. Since we both agree on Penn State, maybe we can argue on one of these later games. Let's talk about Texas taking on Arizona State. Looks like this is 11.5, 12.5, 13.5. Nobody knows what's going on here. Looks like it keeps getting bigger as I slide across spank odds here.
Yep. It moved a little bit today. So it moved some today. Isaiah Bond was announced early Sunday as he is going to play now. He's been practicing this week. So the top wide receiver for Texas playing is going to be a big thing. And, Arizona State backers seem to have forgotten about Tyson being out in this one. He was out in the Big 12 title game. That did not matter. But yeah, in this one, I think it could be a pretty huge thing. I'm very interested in this because Texas teams are not scared to run on Texas, right? You start looking at numbers. Texas is, let's see, on defense. Against the run, they are number 59 in rushing success rate allowed. They're number 35 in offensive line yards allowed, number 32 in stuff rate. And Arizona State is better in both of those metrics, number 18 and number 29, and they are number 6 in rushing success rate. But when you start diving into, more real stats, like these are the advanced stats that I'm looking at, but yards per rush, Arizona State number 46 at 4.77 yards per rush. Texas's defense is number 11 in yards allowed per rush. They only give up 3.11. And it's interesting, right? Because you're looking at a pretty massive talent gap in this one as well. Arizona State's a good football team, though. I still, anything under 2 touchdowns, I kind of feel like Texas would be the spot here. But I'm real curious your thought on this because I'm kind of going back and forth on this one.
I haven't went back and forth at all. I think Texas destroys this team. The way Texas likes to play football, once they get the lead, they never take their foot off the gas. I think Texas covers this number very, very easily. So this game is no different than the Penn State game for me. I think Texas blows them off the map.
So here's the thing. There is a talent gap, but it's not, let's look back. All right. So Boise State is number 77 in team talent composite. Penn State is number 11, right? So that's a massive gap.
Big.
Arizona State is number 30 in team talent. Texas is number 4. And yeah, it's a pretty big gap, but it's not Boise and Penn State.
Okay.
I wonder about this one. You know, you start diving into 5 factors plus talent and all that kind of stuff. Arizona State number 18, Texas is number 4. I think the first half is going to tell us a whole lot about this because I think that Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, I've got a lot of respect for as a schemer. I think that he can come up with some game plans that can make things interesting, especially early. But if Texas's defense is able to just kind of squash them, I mean, it could be a long, long day. It could certainly be a blowout. So like I said, I'm going back and forth on it. But Arizona State, I think, has been a lot better than I anticipated them being. I've gone back and watched several of their games just to kind of get more of a feel of it. Didn't watch the Iowa State game again after I watched it that morning that it happened. But I've gone back and watched the Kansas State game, watched the BYU game. The first half is really where things happen for Arizona State. In those 2 games, BYU and Kansas State, they only scored 10 points combined in the second half. So in 4 quarters of football, in 2 big wins for them, they only had 10 points. So they ran out to big leads early and had to hang on for dear life. I just wonder, like, Texas, I know is super, super talented and whatnot, but they haven't just demolished everybody. They're not just overwhelming. But they might be in this because of the talent. So I'm curious. I lean with you on this. I do think Texas anything under 2 touchdowns, but I could see this number shooting up there once the Bond news kind of gets out there a little more.
What was your number on the game, though? I don't think you said what it was.
I didn't. Let's see. My power rating number has it. Texas by 12. Yeah, Texas by 12 on the power rating. And then just overall with stats and everything else, it's got Texas by a little more than 8. But I'm with you on this. I think under 2 touchdowns, I would lean Texas here.
Okay, then we're completely in agreement. Now,
so far.
So now let's talk about the national championship game. Ohio State taking on Oregon. What do your numbers look like on this one? Because I don't know if we're going to disagree or we're both going to pass. So what do your numbers look like on this one?
All right. My numbers on this, the projected number that my model spit out gave me exactly Ohio State minus 2.50.
Wow. Right.
So yeah, when this thing came out and it opened Ohio State minus 2.5, and I pulled up the model and it showed me Ohio State minus 2.5000. I said, there is no way that it is exactly on the number. It is tough to find an edge in this game. There's a lot of different spots where Ohio State's numbers are just significantly better than Oregon's, right? But Oregon, beginning of the season, didn't look nearly as good as they did going into the end of the season. I continue to. Here's my problem with Oregon. They are so different game to game that I can't exactly figure out what the identity is. I can't figure out exactly what they are best at doing. They are not very good against the run. However, you go back and look on a game-to-game basis, and sometimes they're really good against the run. In the second half of the Ohio State-Oregon game, first half, Ohio State ran like 130 yards on them. In the second half of that game, Ohio State only had like 19 yards. Okay, just however many weeks ago the Big Ten Championship was, Oregon gave up almost 300 on the ground to Penn State. But the week before that, they gave up like 20 yards rushing to Washington. And it's not that Washington is great. It's just, what exactly are you? And I don't know the answer for that. I think Oregon is just a jack of many trades, right? They just, whatever they need to be for that game, that's what they are, and it is what it is. Personnel-wise, overall, Ohio State, I think, is a better overall team, more talent. But I worry about that Ohio State offensive line. They look good against Tennessee. I don't know what they're going to look like against Oregon's defensive front. I imagine Will Howard is going to have time to throw if they focus on Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith and whatnot. I think Ohio State could run away with this. They seem to be in a better spot now than they were. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts here. I'm kind of curious.
Well, if you remember, I disrespected Ohio State in game number 1. I predicted that Tennessee would actually win that ball game.
Oh,
And
you weren't the only one.
I was stunned at what I saw. I think what we've got here is a situation where Ohio State cannot beat Michigan, no matter what.
It's a mental thing.
But they ain't playing Michigan this week. So I tell you what, I know Oregon beat them the first time. It's really tough to beat a team twice in one season, although Georgia pulled it off.
Yep.
I don't see Oregon pulling it off. I'm going to go with the favorite here. Take Ohio State to beat Oregon and knock them out of the tournament.
I lean the same way.
Boy, that's no good for the audience. The audience would rather us tearing our hairs out here against each other. But this game should not be allowed to be played. Let me tell you what I'm thinking here. There's two huge problems with this college football playoff, and this is one of them. This game should not be allowed to be played. These two teams are both in the Big Ten. Let's go up one game. Texas is playing Arizona State. Why don't we grab Texas? Make Texas play Oregon. Let Ohio State play Arizona State. That way, we don't have a team that's played each other already. We don't need this. Now, when there's no possibilities left.
Well, but didn't we just have this in the SEC championship game? I mean, we had a rematch in that.
We did.
I mean,
we did. So here's how you fix that problem, because that's the second problem with the playoffs. Boy, I like it. This is like a basketball game. You just set me up, and you didn't even know it. I want to eliminate championship week. I want to make championship week the first round of the playoffs. The two teams that qualify for the championship game are both in the playoffs. There's no more bye in round 1. Team 1 and Team 2 both make it. And now it's a 16-team playoff. And here's the good thing about this.
Is this only for the Big Ten and the SEC?
No, all four that make it. All four that make it. So the Big Ten, the Big 12, and I guess it's the ACC. Yeah,
so
all of them.
You're saying that the Big 12 and the ACC deserve to have 2, and they deserve to have the same number of participants as the Big Ten and the SEC?
They won't have the same number because you've got all those other spots left. You're now going to have 8 open spots. Not the way we have it today. There'll be 8 open spots, and those are going to be dominated Big Ten and SEC teams.
Okay, I'll tell you exactly which way I'm leaning with this. And Josh Pate talked about it on his show. I think we are going to expand either 14 or 16. I think you're going to end up, if we do 16, I think you're going to get 4 SEC auto bids, and you're going to get 4 Big Ten auto bids. You're going to get 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, and you'll get 1 G5. That'll leave 3 wild card spots. So your Notre Dame and whoever else will get in based on those, based on rankings, etc. But the other stuff will be done by conference standings. We've figured out the tiebreaker stuff this season. So your conference standings, and what you're talking about, where the 2 teams that would be in the conference championship game, they will already be in the playoff, right?
Exactly.
So in the Big 12 and the ACC, it would just be that number 1 team that they would automatically get in. In those conferences, your championship week would be play-in week. And it's the same thing in the SEC. But in the SEC, your top 2 teams, in the Big Ten as well, your top 2 teams automatically go. And then you have 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, and those are play-in games. So that is more inventory that the conferences can provide to their network partners. And it'll be the same thing with the Big 12 and the ACC, except that their number 1 will automatically go. And then their number 2 would be number 2 against number 3. And whoever wins that one gets to go as the number 2 team from the ACC and the Big 12. So that's the direction I think it's going to go in 2026. We'll see. But what you're talking about, doing away with conference championship weekend, yeah, the bye week that these teams get right now, that bye week is going to end up being conference championship week. They're just not going to have to play that week. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, this is just like poker. I wish you'd have went first, and I could have just said, yeah, that's a good plan. Your plan's much better than mine. But you
Well,
had
here's the only reason why that's a better plan is because it's something that's already being talked about. Like it's already out there. The conferences. I say it's already out there. They're not publicizing this or anything, but this is something that is happening on a higher level, and there's already people that are in the know that know something about this. So it's we won't be getting Georgia versus Texas again for an SEC championship game. What you're going to get is just like we did in the 80s and the 90s. It's whoever finishes number one, and you might have co-champions or something like that, but we know who would be ranked number one and who would be ranked number two based on conference tiebreakers already. So you can still crown a SEC or Big Ten champion, but they're not going to play it out on the field.
That makes perfect sense to me. I think we have a chance here, don't we, of Georgia playing Texas a third time? Isn't that the way?
It would be in the national championship game, but yes.
Okay, so and that we definitely don't want. We definitely don't need somebody playing somebody 3 times.
I mean, we don't, but if it happens, I mean, they would have had to go through absolute hell to get there, right? I mean, Texas has to beat Clemson and Arizona State to be able to get to either Ohio State or Oregon. If they win that game, then they're in the national championship game against presumably Georgia at that point. But Georgia would have to play Notre Dame and then the winner of Penn State and Boise State. So let's say Notre Dame and Penn State to be able to get to the national championship game. You win all those games, you've kind of proven that you belong there. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, we see it in the NFL all the time. It's not exactly ideal for a college football fan because in these situations, you want to be able to see as many different kinds of matchups as you can. Yeah. But, if our semifinals are Georgia and Penn State and Ohio State or Oregon and Texas, I'm kind of okay with that.
Okay. We have not talked about the Notre Dame game yet. It sounds like you're giving that game to Georgia.
Well, go ahead. Continue on.
So if you're giving that game to Georgia, you're also saying Georgia is going to beat Penn State.
So I'm not. I already bet Notre Dame at +2.5. But I've gone back and forth on this game as well, right? And I the more I dig into these games, it's driving me insane. I think Riley Mills means a lot to that Notre Dame defense. He had 8 sacks. Notre Dame only had 31 on the season. So, I mean, you're looking at a fourth of their sacks right there. But I do think that they can get a lot of pressure on Gunnar Stockton. And I don't know exactly what this Georgia offense is going to look like with Stockton at quarterback. Everybody always kind of assumes that the offense is going to take a step back. But if you really look at it, Georgia kind of went as Carson Beck went when he was in during the season. I wonder if Georgia's game plan does not drastically improve if they have more of a game manager at quarterback as opposed to somebody that they think can just go out and hit a deep pass, right? You're never going to rely on Gunnar Stockton to go out and have to hit passes for your offense to move. Right. I think they're going to have a healthy Etienne at running back. I think the game plan is going to change significantly. They're going to play this closer to the vest, and I think the defense is going to step up in a big way. What I'm curious about, and the reason why I bet Notre Dame, is Georgia has been terrible in the last couple of years against mobile quarterbacks. If you think about what Jalen Milroe has done to him the last couple of years, if you think about what Haynes King has done to him the last couple of years, if you look at Jackson Dart, had 8 carries for 50 yards on him. The UMass quarterback had 3 carries for 50 yards rushing against that Georgia defense. They're not very good at defending running mobile quarterbacks. Riley Leonard is like the prototypical dual threat quarterback. I don't know how accurate he is. And this one I think is going to be played in like the low 20s, maybe the upper teens. This could end up being 17-14, 21-17, that kind of a ball game. Georgia's been here before. You start diving into other kind of trends and whatnot. Marcus Freeman is now 8-0 against the spread when he has extra time to prep. So that is something to pay attention to. At the same time, Georgia is 7-0 straight up, 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 in the postseason. So they kind of live for these spots as well. I kind of like Notre Dame here because they have their quarterback. But I do worry about their defense not having Riley Mills. I think he was such a huge defensive leader for them, and they've already lost a bunch of guys throughout the season. But this is, I think it's going to be a hell of a ball game. You, which way are you going? Are you kind of leaning Georgia here?
I'm not betting this game. I'm not betting this
Smart
game.
man.
No way, no how. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to miss 1 second of this football game.
Me either.
I can't wait to see it. It shocks me a little bit that you're willing to jump out on Notre Dame. I know you think you did good getting 2.5, and the line movement says you did.
But it opened
but
at
I
Notre
would
Dame -2, and then it moved all the way over to Notre Dame +2.5. And I initially thought, and I will admit, I bet this before I knew that Mills was out. But I mean, I don't feel great about it. Like I saw the number. It was a buy point. I've got Notre Dame favored in the game. Let's see. I've got Notre Dame favored by 5 with my numbers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
I wish you had
look at what.
I wish somebody would hire.
Done,
if somebody hires you to work at a sports book, I want to bet that number. 5?
I know. That's why I would never make this the number. But the model spit it out, and I looked at it, and I said, okay. I mean, you start diving into the advanced numbers. Notre Dame is number 2 in predicted points added margin on the season. Georgia is number 35. Like, this Georgia defense, number 54 in PPA allowed per drive. They've not been great for the whole season. They show up in spots, and this is certainly the spot. But you got to figure out exactly which version of them shows up, right? I mean, they're
right.
You got to remember, like, Georgia has 2 losses on the season. They were 1 point away from losing at Kentucky. This is that same Kentucky team that everybody is bashing Ole Miss for losing to. You know, it's the same thing. So there's a couple of spots where, yeah, like Georgia will definitely show up and look good, but you know, I mean, they were 1 play away from losing to Georgia Tech at the end of the year as well.
That's true. That bothers me too. I don't know what I'm getting here. I'm a big Georgia fan, but I think if you're running a sports book and you had laid +5 on Georgia, I think I'd have to play it. But anything short of that, I don't have to. I'm going to watch this game. I'm going to love this game. But your national championship game is Ohio State playing Oregon. So those are going to be great. Those games look like they're back-to-back on the 1st. It's going to be a big, big college football day.
I think you're right.
I can't even imagine what kind of handle they're going to pull in between those 2 games. Georgia, big national following. Notre Dame, big national following. And this thing is basically a coin flip at the book. This is going to drag in some serious, serious money at the book.
I think so too.
So the thing is, so even if you start to see this, now I'm a top-down guy and I like to see line movement. But even if I saw line movement in this game, I'm still not going to bet it because I'm going to assume that they know something that I don't know and I've already missed the move because I don't see anything big happening in this game. I'm scared Georgia with a backup quarterback. Maybe I shouldn't be scared, but I am. I don't know what's going to happen. Georgia's played some amazingly close games, especially like the Georgia Tech game that maybe they shouldn't even have won. You mentioned the Kentucky game. Yeah, I like Georgia. I'm not playing them in this spot. This one I'm a pass on. I'm going to bet most of my money, I believe, in the Ohio State game of this group.
I could see that. Both of these off of that key number of 3. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this. I'll tell you this. I feel better about Notre Dame than I do about Ohio State because Notre Dame, I've seen them do it over and over and over again this season. They had the one slip up at the very beginning of the year, and they've just kind of crushed everybody since. I mean, they're 9-0 against the spread in their last 9. With Ohio State, it's, you know, we're bouncing from the performance against Michigan to what they did against Tennessee, and it's, okay, well, which one are we going to get? Like, which one of these teams shows up? With Oregon, you know, they're 6-2 against the spread in their last 8. Kind of know exactly what you're going to get with these guys, right? Now, granted, they are not at home this time, so that certainly plays a big part of this.
Yes, it does.
Boy, you get an Ohio State-Texas matchup on January 9th or 8th or whatever it is, and you get either Notre Dame, Penn State, or Georgia, Penn State. I mean, you're talking about monster matchups here.
Yeah, monster matchups, huge college football matchups, great for the game. I love it. One thing I do wish is that NIL was not playing a part in these games, because with the people opting out, it's going to make all of this stuff crazy. And I've asked you about this a couple of times, but I keep seeing this about Texas, and they're talking about NIL, and one of those guys threatening to transfer. And if you threaten to transfer, here's my question to you: if a big player right now would jump into the transfer portal, let's say he's a big quarterback that has not played, could he transfer to Georgia right now and play in this ball game? Is
I
this
don't
free?
I don't believe that. So you're still dealing with academic rules right now. Do not believe that he would be eligible to play, and that's not
Okay.
just NCAA rules. That is just flat school rules, right? So you would have to be enrolled, and you have to be in classes, and there's no classes happening right now.
Okay. Well,
So they
I
couldn't do
was
that right now.
okay. Well, I was just thinking about that the other day. This could turn into the trade deadline, so to speak, and
Oh yeah,
people could be jumping through there. So I don't know. It bothers me a little bit about the NIL, but again, I want to say this: I think the players need to get paid, but we just got to be sane about this. I mean,
well, what you're talking about is basically, the Penn State backup quarterback Bo Pribula or
exactly.
Pribula,
That's
uh,
it.
got $1.5 million to go to Missouri,
Yep.
and presumably he's going to be their starter this coming year. And he had to go ahead and hop in the portal. He had to show up for them. I, I don't think it's great. I think that was something that Missouri wanted. Like, hey, if you're going to come here and be a starter and go ahead and take our check, then we need you to show up now. It's kind of the same thing that they did with coaches, right?
Yep.
Coaches, sometimes they want to stay through it. If you remember the Willie Fritz saga, when he was potentially going to leave Tulane and take the Georgia Tech job, Georgia Tech wanted him to come on now. And he said, whoa, like, I've got an AAC title game that I'm about to coach in, and I want to coach for the conference title. They said, if you are not going to show up now, if you're not going to go ahead and accept the job, then we have to go to somebody that's going to show up and be here for the recruiting class. And he said, all right, I'll pass on it. And it is what it is. But now it's the same thing happening with players as well.
Yep.
And it's why Malik Murphy did it with Texas last year. He hopped out and went ahead and went to Duke. And now you've got the same thing that happened at Penn State. Kind of surprising that it hadn't happened with Texas yet. Now, what you might see, and I'm a little surprised that we didn't see it this go round. Quinn Ewers, there's a lot of talk about him potentially going to a Big Ten school or something like that. He could transfer if he does not to go in the NFL draft, right? And if he had decided, all right, I'm not ready for the NFL, but also know that there's not a spot here at Texas for me next year. I know that we're going into the playoff, and I would love to win a national championship, but I can go and make $4 million going to whatever school it is. I probably need to go do that now.
Yeah.
And then Texas is in the playoff with a backup quarterback, kind of the same thing that Georgia's having to go through, but Georgia obviously was not voluntary.
Right.
It's a strange spot for the sport to be in.
Very strange. Because what happens if that Penn State quarterback goes down?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be
They
happy.
got a freshman.
Nobody's happy at all if this goes happen. So I just want that guy to play safe. I want to see Penn State destroy them. And again, I wish same conferences wouldn't play each other before the finals. But it looks like maybe all that'll be taken care of in the future.
Maybe. It all depends on seeding, though, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing.
That's a problem too. Yeah,
we could still see this. But yeah, I wish we didn't get a rematch at this point. But at least it's a good rematch. It wasn't a blowout in the first game.
1 point, I believe, and Oregon was at home to do that.
Exactly.
But I think that's about all we have for this week.
It was a good show this week.
Great show. And hopefully next year we'll talk about Nebraska winning the recruiting wars, and we'll cover these games too. So, hey, this has been great, Gary. I've loved this entire season doing this with you. It couldn't be more fun. I just want to thank you for your time
Of
and
course.
hanging out with me.
Oh,
I think
absolutely. Hey, next week we'll only have 2 games to talk about, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah, January 8th and January 9th. So we'll be doing this again next Sunday or next Monday, and yeah, we're winding down. We're getting there, but yeah, we still got a little ways to go.
We got a little bit to go, but I think that's a good place for us to stop today.
I like it.
Gary, how can we find you on X or on Twitter or whatever you think it's called?
The usual spot at Gary WCE is the best way to find all of my stuff. That is the BetUS College Football Show that is still rolling, absolutely, and we keep going through the offseason as well. Same thing with Winning Cures Everything. You go to winningcureseverything.com. You can find all of my stuff over there as well.
That's great. And of course, you guys can find me on Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter forever. I don't care. I'm at Vegas Horse Pools. If you have any questions about Spank Odds, it's best to reach me at Spank Odds. That way, if I'm not available, the guy covering will. But I want to thank you guys for watching today, and we'll see you guys